Have you ever felt a sudden chill in your own home? A feeling like you're not alone? What if that feeling turned into a years-long nightmare? Today, we're venturing to Pontefract, England, to uncover the story of a haunting so violent, so relentless. It has been called Britain's most terrifying poltergeist case. This is the story of the Black Monk. Our story begins in the late 1960s at number 30 East Drive, a seemingly ordinary council house. B. Pritchard family Joe Jean and their two children, Philip and Diane, had just moved in, hoping for a quiet, happy life. But their peace was shattered almost immediately. It started subtly, with a fine white powder inexplicably falling from the ceiling, almost like a strange indoor snow. Annoying, sure, but they cleaned it up, thinking it was just a quirk of an old house. They had no idea this was just the first sign of a malevolent presence that would soon consume their lives. Hewn after the dust, small puddles of water began appearing on the kitchen floor. The family would mop them up, only for them to reappear moments later with no leak in sight. They checked the pipes, the roof, everything. There was no rational explanation. Then came the sounds. At first, it was a gentle tapping, like a branch against a window. But the tapping grew into loud, insistent knocking that echoed through the walls, often coming from places where no one could possibly be. It was as if someone or something was desperately trying to get in, or perhaps let them know it was already inside. The activity escalated from strange to downright terrifying. Objects began to move on their own. A tea dispenser would activate by itself, spraying tea leaves all over the kitchen. Heavy furniture, like a solid oak chest of drawers, would levitate and crash down. Doors would slam shut with incredible force, and lights would flicker on and off as if possessed. The family was living in a constant state of fear, unable to predict what would happen next. They were prisoners in their own home, tormented by an unseen force that seemed to be growing stronger and bolder with each passing day. The entity, which the family nicknamed Fred, seemed to have a particular and cruel focus on the children, especially 12-year-old Diane. One of the most horrifying incidents involved Diane being dragged up the stairs by an invisible force. Her screams filled the house as her mother and a neighbor watched in horror, seeing her being pulled by her throat, leaving red marks on her neck. Her hair was pulled, she was slapped, and at one point she was even thrown from her bed. Imagine the terror of seeing your child attacked by something you can't see, something you can't fight. The family felt completely helpless. Their home transformed from a sanctuary into a torture chamber. The poltergeist wasn't just physical. It was intelligent and malicious. It would leave cryptic messages scrawled on walls, sometimes in Latin. It would cut up the family's clothes and pour jam and eggs inside their boots. It even seemed to have a perverse sense of humor, once arranging a pair of gloves on the kitchen counter to make a rude gesture. The family tried to find a rational explanation for everything. They called plumbers, electricians, and even builders, but no one could find a source for the strange occurrences. Bear, living in a real-life horror movie, and the villain was their own house. As the haunting intensified, the entity began to manifest a physical form. The family started catching glimpses of a dark, shadowy figure cloaked in what looked like a monk's robe. The sightings were fleeting but terrifying. This dark spectre would be seen gliding down the hallway or standing silently in the corner of a room, its presence radiating an aura of pure malevolence. The family, now convinced they were dealing with a spirit, named it the Black Monk. The name came from a local legend about a Cluniac monastery that once stood near Pontefract, where a monk had been executed for heinous crimes against a young girl in the 16th century. Was this his vengeful spirit, trapped and lashing out at any family that dared to live on his unholy ground? The family's desperation led them to seek help from paranormal investigators and mediums. One of the most prominent investigators was a man named Colin Wilson, who spent a significant amount of time documenting the case. The presence of investigators, and especially the use of religious symbols, seemed to provoke the entity into a frenzy. When a crucifix was brought into the house, it was turned upside down. Holy water would evaporate or turn into a foul-smelling sludge. It was as if the entity was mocking their attempts to banish it, feeding off their fear and defiance. The house at 30 East Drive became a battleground between faith and a powerful, dark energy. The activity was relentless, continuing for over 2 years. The Pritchard family endured things that most of us can only imagine in our worst nightmares. Green foam would spew from the taps. Objects would fly across rooms aimed directly at people's heads, and the oppressive, terrifying presence of the monk was a constant weight on their souls. The media caught wind of the story, and the Black Monk of Pontefract became a national sensation. Reporters, psychics, and curiosity seekers descended on the small town, all trying to get a piece of the story. But for the Pritchards, this wasn't a story. It was their reality. They were exhausted, traumatized, and living on a knife's edge. Then, as suddenly as it began, it stopped. After years of torment, the house fell silent. The knocking ceased. The objects stayed put, and the shadow of the monk was no longer seen. The Pritchard family, though forever scarred by their ordeal, could finally breathe again. Why did it stop? Some believe the entity simply moved on. Others theorize that the energy of the poltergeist, often linked to the presence of an adolescent in the house, dissipated as Diane grew older. The family eventually moved out, and the house has had other occupants since, many of whom have reported their own strange and unsettling experiences, though none as intense as what the Pritchards endured. To this day, the case of the Black Monk of Pontefract remains one of the most well-documented and debated hauntings in British history. Skeptics argue it was an elaborate hoax, a cry for attention from a troubled family. They point to inconsistencies and suggest that children may have been responsible for some of the phenomena. However, the sheer volume of evidence, the number of independent witnesses, including police officers, neighbors, and investigators who experienced the paranormal activity firsthand, makes it difficult to dismiss entirely. How could a 12-year-old girl levitate a heavy chest of drawers or cause water to appear from nowhere? The house at 30 East Drive still stands, a silent monument to the terror that unfolded within its walls. It has been the subject of countless books, documentaries, and even a horror film. Paranormal investigation teams still visit, hoping to communicate with the infamous Black Monk. Some claim to have captured evidently disembodied voices, strange light anomalies, and that same feeling of oppressive dread that the Pritchards knew so well. So, what do you think? Was the Pritchard family the victim of an elaborate, long-running hoax? Or did they truly live side by side with a violent, centuries-old spirit, the vengeful Black Monk of Pontefract? Whatever the truth may be, their story serves as a chilling reminder that sometimes the most terrifying monsters are the ones we cannot see, the ones that haunt the very places we call home. Thanks for joining me on this journey into the dark. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more tales from the shadows. Let me know in the comments which urban legend or haunting you'd like me to explore next. Stay curious and maybe keep a light on tonight.